Okay.
Nicely done. Hey all, I'm Alexis with the Indie Hospitality Coalition, and we're bringing you this conversation to kind of go through resumes and interviews and as they pertain to the other side out of the industry and some of it inside too. So we have a couple great people helping us out tonight. We've got the HR specialist, Chris King. I've got a restaurant specialist, Leo Ranzone, and then I've got Katie Lazinski, which is our associate producer as the mediator tonight. So I'm going to hand it off to them. Thanks, guys.
Okay, so does anybody have any questions that they want to?
Let's do introductions, just because I know a lot of people here, but I think it might be better just so people know why we're talking about this, because if there might be some people on here that have no idea definitely what Leal's doing here. So just to kind of give them some background about what we're doing. So I can go first if that's all right. So my name is Chris King. I work for a pharmaceutical company called Novartis. I am the head of HR services for all of North America and Canada. That includes recruiting, benefits, payroll, and HRIS, which is just the technical background of HR. I've been doing that. I've been HR for about 6 years, but prior to that, I waited tables for forever. I was in the service industry, front of the house, for about 10 years, mostly bartending. And then I also do a podcast called Harder Brunch that is just me and a professional chef talking about food and mostly just getting drunk. So that's kind of my connection to the HR and sort of my background, why I'm here, and also my connection to the industry.
Leo, go ahead.
I'll go next.
It's literally
so I'm Leo Ranson. I am the general manager of a restaurant in downtown Indianapolis. It's actually attached to a hotel, the JW Marriott. I've been in the industry. I started in college, so it's been 16 years now that I've been working in restaurants and bars. Worked my way up. I've pretty much done every job in the business at this point. And the last 2 gigs I've done have been in hotels, which is kind of a niche, not niche, but it's a different sort of side of the business from independent stuff. A little bit more corporate. We deal a lot more with visitors and convention groups here in Indianapolis. So that's kind of why I'm here, is to kind of answer any questions people might have about if you're looking to change jobs, if the job that you have is no longer there, kind of how to think about how to build a resume or how to get yourself in front of somebody so you can hopefully have the opportunity to find something. So.
And then I'm Katie Lazinski. I am currently an associate producer. When I was in college in sports broadcasting, I had an unpaid internship. So the grind started there. I started out as a host here in Indy. And then after graduation, I worked at a couple different places as a server. And then I moved to Wisconsin to be a sports reporter at a TV station. And in my contract, I could not work in the restaurant or bar industry. So I didn't do that for 2 years. And then when I came back, Leo used to be my manager. And then when I came back, I called him and said, hey, I need a job. So then I started working at Plat 99 in the Alexander Hotel. And then I currently still work there part-time. And then my full-time job as an associate producer is out with IndyCar and the Motor Speedway and all of that. So I still work part-time, and I probably will for a while longer, because we all know once we get that bug, it's hard to leave it. So good. Cover all the bases.
I think what we talked about before we started here was just like, mostly I think Chris and I want to know just kind of what people are looking for. So if you have questions, feel free to turn your mic on and ask them, because if you have questions about inside the industry, I will probably be more helpful with that. If you have questions about how to get out of the industry, or there's a lot of technical stuff on the HR side from a corporate side when you're looking into changing jobs, that I think Chris can be helpful with. And even just strategies for how Chris left the industry, how you make your job, Chris. I think that'd be interesting here as well. So let's just start there. Chris, how did you leave? Like, one, how did you make your way into HR? And then two, like, what got you interested in that side of stuff?
So I was working at McNiven's. I was originally from Chicago. I came to Indy really to go to school. And so I was at IUPUI and originally started for finance, but that was really hard. So I didn't want to do something that was hard, and it also was pretty boring. And HR was just, and the people that I talked to in HR is just, there's so many things you can do. You can make it what you wanted. So I just thought it was extremely interesting, and there is so much you can touch. I mean, things that it's the best kept secret as far as jobs go. I mean, you look at The Office and you look at Toby, and he looks like that's the worst. It's great. Everybody should stay out of it because I don't know that I can handle the competition. But HR is really, really the best job in the world, and I just like it so much. I mean, I get to do recruiting. I get to, make companies better. I get to be, my biggest piece is just to be an employee advocate, which, you kind of have to sneak that in sometimes because it's all about sales. You can't go to a boss that's maybe talking about, things that are super discriminatory, even in, in the situation we're in now, and say, well, I'm an employee advocate, because then you push them away. But using the same thing I've done all the time, sales strategies that I've learned just in waiting tables for so long to kind of get somebody into doing the right thing. And that's a big part of why I like what I do. But moving from the service industry to where I am now was definitely not easy. I want to keep this an open forum, and like Lil said, I want to talk about what you guys want to talk about, but just to give it some structure, I did kind of just lay out some bullet points that I think kind of apply based on conversation we've had. But you're definitely open to stop me, interrupt me, ask some questions. I want to make sure this is applicable to you. So just going there, you can go to where to start. So I was waiting tables. I was still in school. I didn't want to finish school and then start a job not knowing if I would like it. Plus, I was in school forever. I was just terrible at school. So I didn't know if I'd ever get out. So I thought I'd just start right away. So one of the things I recommend to everybody, and anybody that's ever asked me about how to start a job, I always say the same thing, is I'm a huge fan of third-party recruiters. So I went to a place when I was at IUPUI. On the bench, they had this place that was called That's Good HR. And I just thought, well, I want to do HR, and it's on a bench at IUPUI. That seems great, so I'm going to do that. So I called them. They sent me up there, and they did exactly what we're doing now. They talked about my resume. They talked about what I had that was applicable, what I could bring to the table, and we're also really honest about the fact that I couldn't get most of the jobs they were hiring for because I had zero experience. But what they were somebody that was really trying to sell me as an employee, like, hey, this is a good way to get this guy's foot in the door. That's just a great way to kind of start out because you're not starting from zero. You're not just sending resumes blankly. It's someone that's coming in and doing the work for you, that's been there, that already has their foot in the door. So, in Indiana, I know there's probably a lot in Colorado already, but in Indy, you have Aerotech, Vaco, That's Good HR. There's a ton of them. Go to all of them, especially now. Go to all of them. It's always a good place to start. And then I kind of just talked on the resume. I think the resume is always something people really worry about. Anytime I've ever had people talk to me about, it's like, what should my resume look like? So it's really an easy answer. It's not even about playing. It's a really easy answer. Find the job you want. Find a couple of versions of that job, a couple postings, and then build your resume towards that job. That's it. Just find the job that you want to do, and then look at your resume and experience and apply that experience that you have to what they're looking for. When we're hiring for jobs, it's not rocket science. It's the same test that you did in school. It's like, this is what you need to get to pass the test. If you're putting the answers that are there to pass the test, that's it. That's how you pass it. If you can't apply what you've done in your experience to that job, the reality is there's sometimes you may have to aim a little bit lower. And I can speak to that. When I tried to get a job in HR, I couldn't get a job working at a desk or even at a computer. I got a job at a file room. And I was literally just in charge of finding duplicate files and doing that, and then putting together these onboarding folders. But I worked for a great company, and I got a lot of really good opportunities. And in less than 2 years, I was the head of their payroll department. That was a lot of going in there, keeping my head up, a humbling experience of not knowing what I was doing. Coming from serving, we just know what's going on. You just know what's going on. You've done it for so long. But when you make this transition, it's like when you get out of prison. You may be Red from Shawshank Redemption in prison, but when you go in the outside world, no one knows how good of a server you are. No one knows that you're the best bartender in the world. You're zero. You're starting from zero again. And you're working with great people, but it's about turning those opportunities and turning that zero. One, the benefit of it is that the expectations are very low. I mean, you come into those entry-level positions, the expectations were very low. I screwed up a lot, and they're just like, oh, that's what you do because you don't have any experience. Like, this is great. I'm going to screw up even more. But the other thing is really just using that, constantly asking questions, constantly finding somebody that's going to help you get to where you need to go, and then constantly taking every single advantage that you can possibly get. So for example, I was working the file room, and one of the things that they had me do, it's so stupid. They were a holding company, and what they did was they had this gigantic file drawer of individual pieces of paper that they would put into this folder that would be this onboarding folder. And they're a holding company, so they just purchased other companies. So they would have to build 100 to 200 of these every couple months. And so I built 10, and it took me 3 hours. It was the stupidest thing I've ever done. And so I went home and I figured out Adobe. I figured out how to make PDFs. I figured out how to do fillable PDFs. And in a couple weeks, it was a digital version of that folder that you didn't have to put it together anymore. I can't stress, I know you always hear that, and this is kind of just the same. These are things that you've probably heard before, but I can't stress the importance of how it was to do that. You can absolutely go into these jobs and just do what they ask you to do and push the button every day and build up your resume. You can do that. And then if the job is terrible and you just don't like the opportunity, you're still building up that background with, 2 years is pretty important, but build that and walk out of there and, have some experience in that. Or you can, if those opportunities come up, if you tackle those, that can make a huge difference. I mean, that absolutely what I did when I was building those stupid folders, absolutely I can track to what I'm doing right now. I mean, not this phone call, that had nothing to do with the folders, but definitely in the job that I'm doing, it can track all the way to the back of that. And it was just so important of how I do things. I mean, the other thing too is like, that is all applicable experience. I build, for my job, even today, I build SOPs for a living, which is just standard operating procedure about how things should be done. And that's not something that apparently anybody knows how to do in the industry because things get lost. Don't do that. I learned how to do my first SOP when I worked at McNiven's because we had that training folder for you guys that work there of any literally a chimpanzee could walk into McNiven's, and if you followed the steps in that stupid folder, you could do literally anything in there. You could do anything. So every SOP that I've ever built in all these different companies look exactly like the SOPs in that stupid folder. So, that's where it comes down to like, how can I do applied experience? I wish I'd known to put on my application experience in developing SOPs. I wish I knew what an SOP even was at the time. But those are things where when you have a job that you want, and this is the position you want, you have to put in the work to like see what's in that job, what does that do, and maybe do some research to see how your experience might apply to what they're looking for. So that's a big one. Any questions or anything that anybody was talking about?
I was just to add on to that real quick, Chris. I think too that like even if you're looking in the industry, that's still important because it's important to like when I look at a resume for let's just use the example of a server. Like it's
Right.
not just like, hey, I was a server here. Like I also want to know like what did you do? Because the more things you can tell
Right.
me that you did concretely, like how big was the restaurant? How many tables did you have? How many people would you serve a night? What were your average nightly sales?
Right.
Did you win sales contests? Like it's stuff like that helped me to understand like, oh, this person understands like how big the restaurant was, what their role was within that thing that they did, and how that can help me in what I'm doing now. So it's the same idea basically. It's the same idea of like, all right, this person says they could handle a 5-table section at a really busy restaurant with do $1,500 a day in sales. Okay, now when we get to the interview, like I'm going to have serious questions because that says that you can do a lot. But if
Right.
you're able to answer those questions, then I'm going to believe you. But that'll get you from the resume stage to the interview stage because you're showing me that
Right.
you understand what you were doing more than just going in and punching the button every day.
Well, and I think that's I think it makes sense.
You're
I
showing
think that
a larger understanding of how your piece fits into the whole organization.
right.
Go
Well,
ahead, Chris.
I think it's also, I've said that before when you talk about resumes, is that it's not about just saying, hey, this is the job description of this job that I did. Like, I was supposed to do this. Well, that doesn't tell me anything. Well, I don't know if you did that or not. That was just what you were supposed to do. But on those resumes too, it's really important. What I look for when I'm interviewing people, what my recruiters look for, it's always what they brought to the table, what they achieved in that time. So increasing sales, revenue, reducing the amount of time something takes, removing bottlenecks, that specifically is the type of language that people are looking for when they're looking at resumes. They're definitely not looking anybody that just comes in and they have the bullet points of like, that just their job descriptions, which I see those every day at every level. I see doctors that are sending me those resumes that they just have what the job description was. We don't look at those. We don't look at anybody that just has a job description, especially where I work. We need somebody that is killing it on a regular basis, and that's important when you put that job description together. I think it's a really good point.
I have a question.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I have been in the industry for 12 years and I just recently resigned and I'm ready to move on. So I've been in management and I know, like, I guess this new world of job searching is, I'm not really quite sure what those job descriptions mean and if my skills match with that, because I've been in the industry for so long. I don't know. I know what SOPs are, but I don't know if like this project manager position is, right for me, or I don't know if I'm using the right lingo in my resume. So I guess I know that the third party recruiting people could probably maybe help me navigate that. Yeah. But like, I personally just do not know what jobs are the best suited for me because of their job descriptions. It's been so long, I'm just lost.
No, I mean, project management specifically, I think that's why it's important, one, like I said, to pick what you want to do, and that takes some research to kind of find what you want to do. Like when I decided HR, especially when I didn't want to do finance, it did take some time to kind of figure out exactly what I wanted to do and what the job was. So it does take a while to figure that out, but coming in as a manager, and if you talked about going into project management as a manager, oh my God, all the stuff is probably there. Managing timelines, reducing timeliness, tracking beginning and completion, reducing timelines for that. All of that stuff is
tracking cost expense variables on a day-to-day basis.
Right.
Reducing cost overages and overruns, managing labor, all project. Literally running a restaurant is project management day to day. It's shift-to-shift project management. You have your staff come in. If your staff come in, you have a goal for the day, which is sales or, giving people food. And then you manage that project throughout the day. Stuff happens. You manage around the stuff. And then you end the day. And then at the end of the week, you look at your labor, you look at your cost sheets, you look at all this stuff and make sure that you're doing it the right way so the business is profitable in the long run. Because honestly, from what I understand, with most people I know who work in project management, what it really is making sure that you don't overspend and that you come in saving money. Because that's what your boss is going to want out of you. They want the job done, whatever the heck is, faster and for less money than what they were getting out of the person in the role before. Or, So it's, how do you look at your job as that?
I feel more drawn because I've been in that GM role. I've definitely been more drawn to like that project management aspects. I feel like I'm right in line with it, but it's like more like, it's usually like a pharmaceutical company or, maybe a warehouse or logistics piece where like, I'm not quite sure I know what the technical pieces that they're using, whether that's software or some kind of like, it seems overwhelming.
There's a lot. I think you're right. When you do have to punch your weight, right? So there are project management jobs that are extremely specialized where there is that jargon, but there are other jobs that are just specifically that don't have that. And I think that I know that right now looking for a job is a lot harder than it was 5 months ago, right? Because there were just so many out there. But when you talk about that's when I think you have to really kind of hit your weight when it comes to that and really know like, hey, listen, if I think that this isn't something that I think I know how to do, apply. First of all, it's not going to hurt to apply because it's all practice. Everything is practice. So it's not going to hurt you to apply. The worst that can happen is you get a job you're not qualified for. I've never been qualified for any job that I get ever. So, but that's the thing, still apply and just keep practicing. But again, that's why it's important. I think not just to build a resume, but just as an exercise to take what they're looking for and convert that to your experience. Because if you can't do that, if you're having trouble do that, there's a lot of different people you can ask. It's always good to maybe know somebody in the industry that can do that. But if you can't do that, until you can do that, you're going to have difficulty even in that interview process because about stuff like that. And that's not a great answer because it's like, yeah, no, but I want to get the job. I know. But you have to kind of
Right.
turn around and say like, hey, these are the jobs that I think that will apply. Because if you go in there and even if you get that, it's going to be harder to even get, move to that because they're going to want applicable experience. But it's just not going to be, you're not going to learn as much because you're just trying so hard to kind of get up to speed. But I think they're out there. I think a lot of project management jobs that I've seen, there's Millhouse is actually right down the street from me. They just hired a project manager, and it literally is just baseline managing timelines on projects. I think anything that you're doing with real estate, if you do something with real estate and those projects, that's absolutely
Okay.
transferable skills. And that's what Millhouse did. And
Cool.
the person that ended up getting that job came from, I believe it was like a yard cleaning service. And again, it's a decent amount. I think the banding for that is like 60 to 80. So it's a decent pay. And then obviously the more specialized it gets, that pay increases. But for your general project management, things like that, you're still making a pretty decent amount.
Cool.
And
Thank
I think
you.
Really quick.
I think too, Suzanne, to play off of what he was saying too, I think it's really important as you're looking at what they're asking for and what you've done and how you can make it applicable, also understanding how you want to frame yourself in that way, so that you're framing what you've done in a way that they understand it, but also in a way that you can explain it, so that if you do get to the interview phrase and they're asking you questions about what was this, you're not like, what?
Right.
You can say like, oh no, this is the concrete project that I managed. This is what I did. This is the thing that I took from end to end. This is what I did here, and it's a lot of it to me, at least a lot of people that have been not always the strongest employees necessarily, but sometimes the strongest interviewers are people who are best able to explain what they did in the past as well, because they've obviously thought about it and they've contemplated the things that they did that would make them good for this job, And so they've taken the time to sit down and think through what they've done and how they want to tell that story about themselves, because that's almost as important, especially when you're just putting it on a blank piece of paper. Like,
Right.
telling the story is part of that,
Yeah, I feel like my opportunity for jobs is definitely going to be based on my brand and being confident in what I can do when I translate it to somebody in the industry. Like, I just want it to be in front of somebody, and then when I can get to that point, I'll know what I know and just brand confidently, I guess.
Yeah.
No,
I think
absolutely.
a big thing, I was just going to say something super quick. One thing that I think people go past, I've job searched a lot in my life. The internet is a great thing. Like, if you're on a site like Indeed or Monster or something like that, where you're looking at stuff, like you were saying, sometimes the jargon that they use can be intimidating, or to where you're like, I don't know what you want, or I don't know if this is right for me. Go look at their website. A lot of times, especially if it's a smaller company, they will have like a meet the team page or a contact page where you can look at other people's bios and you can get a feel for, okay, would I even fit in with this office? Is this the right place for me? And then once again, with the internet, you can either go to Facebook, or a lot of times they have an email address, or if you're applying to a place, I know that we keep using the title project manager, they might have other project managers to where you can send them a message even before you apply and just say, hey, do you have time tomorrow for a quick phone call? Like, I want to pick your brain about this posting, that sort of thing. Even just putting yourself out there over email, or after you apply on those generic sites, sending something to who your boss would be or something like that, sometimes would get you in the door to, like you said, as soon as you get to talk to somebody, that's when you can really put yourself forward and you have that confidence.
Yep.
But a lot of times it does take time though, because then you're like, oh my gosh, I've been online for 2 hours and I've applied to a job.
Yeah.
But then I think that also comes across in your resume or your cover letter, because then you can also say, oh, I looked at your website, I saw that you guys do this stuff, something to try to put yourself in front of others.
Nice. Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
The other thing that I would always say to people, and this is my favorite, is what I did was I applied everywhere. And I even applied to jobs like, especially when I left Calumet was my first HR job, and I was trying to leave there. I went for jobs that I was overqualified for, just because I didn't have a lot of experience interviewing. And you can do practice interviews and you can do that with friends, whatever, but it's not real until the real interview. It doesn't hurt to go to an interview that maybe you don't know if you want it, and maybe it turns out, but really just to kind of prepare yourself for actual interviews. Practice all the time. So if somebody says, I don't know how often you've been going on interviews or when the last time you were looking for a job, but I would recommend shooting low and getting that interview, if anything, just to kind of get back in that cadence. An interview is a bizarre conversation. It is so stupid. It's so weird and bizarre. And being a regular human being like yourself, you're not going to naturally flow into that cadence of interviewing. And so I think it's really, I would always recommend shooting for a job that you know that you'll get an interview for, just to get that cadence and that practice, so that when you get to that job that you really like, you're not sitting there super nervous, like, I forgot what my name was. Like,
Yeah.
it really is a good way to kind of get through that. I did that a lot, and it was really great. And I mean, it was jobs that I thought, like, I could definitely get this, but I did such a poor job interviewing because I get real sweaty, that I didn't get those job either. Like, so,
Yeah.
but it was really, really good practice to kind of be ready when I got the next thing. But
I'll add to that too, actually, from the hotel side of stuff. Most organizations, especially like contained larger organizations, like the hotel that I work at and the hotel that I work at, the Alexander, the management team in general is very aware of what their labor needs are. So if you come in for an interview for something and it's a little below what you think it is, I'm pretty aware of every other job we have available in our hotel. And if you don't fit what I need, but I feel like you should meet with two other people because you might fit one of the needs on their team, I can get you in front of that person. Like, that's happened more than once with me, where I'll be doing an interview for somebody who's applying for something this doesn't quite fit for them for this, but they would be really good at X, Y, or Z, and I know we're hiring for that too, or we're thinking about hiring for that in the future. This person should meet this other person. They're not going to work for me, but I think they'll fit our organization as a whole. And how do we figure that out? And that's something that happens quite a bit. So if you're applying for something that maybe it seems like it's below where you want to be, and you're not sure you want to take the job, it's good practice 1 and 2. You might sit down with somebody who doesn't know they're going to have an opening coming up in 2 months that fits exactly what they want from you. And so they meet with you. They're like, yeah, I don't know, you're the right fit for this. And then 2 months later, something else comes up and they're like, I got to call that person again because now this role that we have open, it wasn't open 2 months ago, is open, and that's the person. Like, the person that I met with should fit that role 100%.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Susan.
No, it's just good. It's just good, good vibes, good flow to just get out there.
Yeah, and the other part that I think is fairly frustrating, Suzanne, especially coming from the restaurant world and coming from independent restaurants to going into a more corporate environment in hotels too, the hiring process can sometimes be so much longer than what we're used to in hospitality. Because in hospitality, like, they'll literally give you a job and you can come back the next day and start working because they need the help, and that's the way our world works. Yep. And that is not the way that most corporate environments work. You're talking about weeks and weeks of interviews and lead times, and it like, even then, like, the position that I'm in now, from the point that I verbally accepted the job to the point that I actually signed the offer letter, was almost 4 weeks. It was a really long time because organizationally they were moving some stuff around and it just took a while. Yeah. And that happens, and it's not ideal. And I can tell you that every organization you'll talk to is telling you that they're going to get that better at that, and all of them are trying. But it can still take what can seem like, especially coming from the restaurant industry, it can seem like, why aren't we moving on this? Why is this happening faster? And it's just because it takes longer when you move out of this industry, Yeah.
No, first of all, to Leal's point, I've done that before. I've had somebody that interviewed for a position. I said, listen, you're not going to fit for this position, but we do have this other tier position. And it was in the same department. It just happened to be that we had a position that we hadn't posted yet that was a little bit lower tier, not a whole lot less money. And I said, hey, this is what you'd be good at. And we're still working to fill this position. So if you want to come in and do that, you'll have an opportunity to kind of pick up some of those responsibilities, and then also, learn to do that. That is absolutely a real thing that I don't think that it happens a whole lot, but it does happen. I mean, I've definitely done it myself where I've done that.
Also, done it.
Yeah, it's just crazy. I mean, that's the thing. I remember hearing that and people saying that, like, no one does that. No one's going out of their way to fire. If they don't hire you, they send your resume somewhere else and they never see it again. But we do that all the time. So it's not that completely unrealistic that could happen. The other thing I did also want to say was on, I kind of wanted to talk about cover letters a little bit. And I kind of wanted to talk about, because I think those are, speaking of resume questions, and I know Katie brought it up. Katie, do you usually include a cover letter when you send resumes? You usually send that?
I do. My industry is a little bit different because
Right.
we aren't super cover letter happy or
Okay.
heavy. It's more of like examples of work,
Yeah. That makes
but I
sense.
try to.
Well, that's what I was going to say, because I am always, I know Alexis, I've talked to this a million times. I am not an advocate typically for cover letters, but I think it is based on industry. Like I would say for what you're doing, you have to have a cover letter because you have to see the person that's there is so important. And like 98% of the time I say, listen, usually when you're applying for jobs, the first person that sees your cover letter and your resume is just a recruiter that's going through 50 or 60 at a time. I don't usually look at cover letters. Most of my recruiters don't look at cover letters. But I think that you have to know the industry. I think there are other industries where that cover letter is important. But if I would say for like an accountant, for admin position, administrative positions, a lot of those types, project managers, I say typically I wouldn't worry about that. And I mean that in a good way, because I think cover letters are so hard to say, like, oh, what am I supposed to say here? Say nothing. Say nothing. The person that is pulling you into that job, is, especially when it's at the beginning tier of office jobs, they're not worried about making sure that you're a good person. They're going to find that out when they talk to you. What they're worried about is they need to make sure that you check every box of the requirements of the position. That's what's more important. And I say that not to discredit cover letters at all. I'm just saying I think a lot of people worry about that, and I'm saying don't worry about the cover letter.
I think that definitely is like a fad that's leaving. Like my boss does a lot of the hiring at our company, and I would say he mainly looks at resumes. And
Right.
like Chris, we all kind of talked a second before we hopped on with everybody, and one thing that Chris said was, if you say like in a cover letter, I'm a really hard worker, okay, period, that doesn't really mean anything. So
No.
like I said, like sending an email as opposed to just applying, or sending, like a message on LinkedIn, whatever it is, to try to, like when I was a sports reporter, I posted that I was leaving and said, hey, if anybody wants to hop on board, let me know. And then I could help, like, people are always wanting to help fill a void. So even looking at Facebook groups of, there's a Facebook group for anything. So even if you want to join like project managers in Indianapolis, who knows what it is.
Yep.
We are a small city, or Randy out in Colorado, I'm sure that there are things too. Like, you don't know.
We don't know for a fact that there are things, though, Randy. I don't want to give you the impression that we know that there are things. I'm sure there are things, but we don't know. We don't know.
Likely are.
We don't know for a fact that there are things.
I wanted to ask, now that we're on the topic of cover letters, somebody had mentioned to me that the cover letter is a good place to kind of mention why you're trying to change fields. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I know the person that mentioned that. What I would say is that, again, it doesn't at that level, at that job specifically, I can't say for a fact that is the case, but I can tell you it really, I know that I've hired for a lot of different industries, and I've hired for a lot of different levels, and I have recruiters now that are hiring all the time. My experience is not all the experience in the world, but obviously I also, for the HR circles that I travel in, which that is as boring as it sounds, cover letters are a little bit like kind of like just this, it is something that just has kind of gone away. And I don't think it's important about why you're leaving. I mean, think about it. The people that are, more than likely, you're not giving that application, that resume, to someone that came from the service industry. So if that's the case, they know why you're leaving, because their life is so much better than yours, because they have no idea how good it is. Or it's somebody that is in the service industry and they know why they're leaving because that's what they've done too.
Okay.
So I just don't see the reason that you have to create that narrative. I think that to me, it would be hard for me to believe that would be what got you in the door if the experience didn't match up, because that's what that conversation is for. It's when it comes to cover letters, what they're really trying to do is create that fit that you have in that team environment. But that you can't see that until you actually have the conversation.
Okay.
I can speak here and say to you that for anyone that I've ever hired or helped interview, even people not in my like food and beverage department, never looked at a cover letter. Doesn't matter to me. Because I'm going to look at your resume, I'm going to see how well you can explain to me what you did and how well you did it based on metrics that you're going to put on your resume. And then the cover letter stuff, I'm going to ask you in an interview. But it's either you're either going to get an interview or you're not. Like, it's not like just because someone like, and if you send in an application and you don't hear anything and you want to know what you could do differently or what maybe you could work on, I'd rather have somebody send me an email or a LinkedIn message or something like that, or a message to the HR department that you're applying to, and just say, hey, I understand you want to hire me. Why? Is there something I left out on my resume? Is there something I didn't? I would, most of the HR people that at least I've worked around, and Chris can correct me if I'm wrong on this, would usually respond to that with a, hey, you just didn't fit.
I do. I do.
Yeah.
I've
You,
had
like,
multiple
you
people
didn't
tell
have
me.
these qualifications. You should go get this thing. You should go get
Yeah.
this certification. Like, that's why we didn't call you back. You know, and so,
Yeah.
like I'm not going to read a cover letter at all. Like, I'm
You're
just going
right.
to look at your resume and say, what did you do and how well can you explain to me what you did, and did it make an impact in the organization you were in? Yes or no?
No, I think Lil's right, and I'll tell you, anybody that's ever sent me something on LinkedIn that asked about working at either an application they sent in or just finding out about open positions, I've responded to absolutely every single one.
Okay.
I think he's right. I think that's important. Which goes to one of the other topics that I have is about networking, and I know we talked a little bit about branding. So I will take every opportunity I can to talk about networking because I think it's just such a buzzword, and no one really knows exactly how they're supposed to do it. Let me tell you this: it really is. It has to be genuine relationships. Getting 500 plus people on LinkedIn and sending them a congratulations when you saw that they got a promotion. No one cares. Those people are not going to give you a job. The jobs that I have are this job, the previous, actually every single HR job that I've had after Calumet was someone that knew me and knew what I brought to the table and then recommended me for that job. Every single job. And for this job, it was a third party recruiter, but it was still because of recommendations that I ever had. So it's two sides, you know. Networking is not as easy as going to a networking event. Those are stupid. It's not about going to a networking event and meeting somebody that may be able to help you. At networking events, everybody is there trying to find somebody that can help them. No one is there because they're the helper, because then they don't need to go to those. That's the point. So it is just about getting in there, especially if it's that first office job. You know, that first office job, if you've never done an office job before, is about learning those ropes, and that is the interview. That is the interview for every job you're going to have down the road. And so those relationships and that is so important to not burn the bridge and build that bridge for what it's going to be. And then the second point that I would say that I'm a huge believer in is you have to also be that person, is that once you get there, when it happens, you have to absolutely reach back and help somebody else out too. You know, when I was trying to get a job, I had a terrible resume. My resume was garbage. And Brent Woodruff, who I don't know if anybody on this call knows who Brent is, but he is Kara Beardman's now husband. They have 2 kids. At the time, he was just a dude she was dating. And he happened to be in recruiting. And I said, hey, man, I don't know if you can help me with this, but I know I'm going to HR. I just don't know what to put on my resume. All I've ever done is give people food and get them drunk and tell them that they had to leave. I don't know how to put that on a resume. And he took it, and he didn't just tell me how to do it. He wrote my entire resume. He wrote it. That's the resume I use today. It's the same resume I'm using right now. So I think that's why I am always this huge advocate for always whatever I can do to help anybody. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think it sounds like it's so like, well, yeah, but I'm still at the beginning. It's never going to happen. It happens a lot. Once you really get into it, it happens a lot faster than you think it does. And then the way that we move as an industry, as a group, as all of us, we all move is by continuing to help everybody else get where they need to go to.
I think one thing that service industry has a huge leg up on is networking. I mean,
Yeah,
even
you're
the simple
absolutely right.
formula of, hey, you go to a table or somebody sits at your bar, you tell them your specials. Okay, so when you're reaching out to somebody not in the business, you
Yeah.
tell them what you have to offer them, and
Right.
then add a little bit of personality, add a little bit of caring, even if you don't actually care. Ask them a question about themselves. You know,
Right.
hey, Father's Day was maybe not Father's Day because that could be a touchy subject for people, but hey, July 4th
Why?
coming up. You know, like,
I've never heard anybody say Father's Day. It's a touchy subject. Just
well,
because
you don't know oh, my dad passed away. Like,
Oh,
you don't want to start off that way, but just meaning like,
now I'm never gonna say Happy Father's Day to anybody.
say, I mean, obviously right now, COVID, hope you're healthy. There's always a way, that good balance between saying, hey, I care about you and I want you to care about me, and here's why. Like, when I worked as a reporter, somebody even said to me, you can go up to anybody and start a conversation about anything. And I really do think a lot of that is from the restaurant industry. You walk up to a table, you've never met them before in their lives. And one thing that I also have learned from the restaurant industry that translates to all of this is, if you send somebody an email, if you send somebody a Facebook or a LinkedIn message, whatever it is, where you are putting yourself out there, what I tell myself all the time, I've sent so many Twitter DMs, which in sports, Twitter's huge. I don't know about every other industry, is I always tell myself, what's the worst that could happen? They just don't respond. And then I never meet them. It's not like they're going to go into the office the next day and be like, oh my gosh, this weirdo sent me a Twitter DM. And if they do, who cares? Like, you just didn't get it. But the best that could happen is that you get a job.
Right. But that's on them. I think that's the same thing with, like, when you send like the LinkedIn messages or reach out to people that are hiring for jobs. If they don't reach out, I mean, I know it's cliche, but I don't want to work for those people anyway.
Right.
I mean, people in HR should be interested in developing you. People in HR should be interested in helping you get better and make you a better candidate. You have to be an advocate for your company everywhere. And if they didn't do that, if they didn't respond to your question, then they're just not very good at their job.
Yeah.
So I think, especially in that respect, always, that's so much better. If you're worried about a cover letter, it's always gonna be better to say, hey, I'm super interested in your company, really interested in this position. I sent you a resume, but if you have further questions, just please feel free to reach out. I always respond to those people.
And I think too, to follow up on that too, like I said, like most hiring managers in most organizations have a pretty good idea of what the organization needs from a talent perspective, because it's our job to fill those spots, because it makes all of our lives easier. And so reaching out to somebody and saying, hey, like, I think I want to leave what I'm doing, but like, what could I do to come work for you? Because your company seems really cool and I really like working for you, but I don't know what to do. Most people will look at that and go, yeah, let's talk. Because like, you might be somebody who I can slide into an entry-level position now, but your skill set, once I teach you the lingo and the specifics and the technical side of what this is, your skill set that you've learned, because now that I've talked to you, I've learned you're really good at X, Y, and Z, and you've done this and that, and you've made these positive changes, these places you've been. Like, let's bring you in here, because in 18 months, I know that we're going to have this other thing that's probably going to be perfect for you, and I'll give you a shot to at least help you get there, because that's part of it too, is like, we don't, in my opinion, the best organizations that I've worked for are not the ones where they're hiring somebody for the job you're going to do now. They're hiring you for a job you're going to do 3 or 5 or 7 years down the road, because that's what you have to do to keep growing your organization effectively. And so sometimes looking at that entry-level job and realizing it's the first step that you have to take, and it might feel like it's backwards from what you're currently doing in the service industry, but in reality, it's just the first step that you have to take, because it's going to get you to where you want to be. And the people who work in HR should be wanting to help you get there. They should be wanting to say, what skills do you have that can apply to what we do, and do they match? And if they do match in some way, how can I help you? How can I help plug you into a place? Because that's what good HR people do. They find good people who are good at things and find ways to help them help our organization. That's it. That's what good HR people do. Like, you find somebody who has a skill set that can help you do a certain thing, and hopefully they'll help you 3 more times down the road. Like, that's the goal,
Are there any other questions?
You got 7 minutes.
I think I'm good. I've just enjoyed learning.
One thing that I actually have a question on is, I actually talked to Alexis about this last week, of at the end of an interview or whatever point of an interview, when the employer says to you, do you have any questions for me?
Yeah.
As a reporter, I always have at least 5, because I just always come up with crap. I think that is an easy way to further sell yourself. Like I told Alexis, the one that I always ask first is there anything about this job that you think that I either won't fit into or I won't like? Like with mine, my boss said, you will have to work weekends. I mean, usually it's something that they've already talked about, but I think that shows them, okay, she or he is serious about this, or, oh, wow, I have never heard that before. And then that's a way to make them think next Tuesday, oh, wow, remember when that person asks that question, like, I think that's just another way too. And then you always feel like crap if you say, no, I think you covered everything. I mean, at least try to have like one or two.
And I'll say too, as somebody who's hired people, like if you don't have questions, then I don't like there's no way that I can cover everything that is a job in a 20 or 30 minute interview. I'm just not.
Yeah.
And so if you don't have anything that if I've answered all your questions and I've gone through, because most places you have an interview form that's standardized to avoid discrimination, so you have certain questions and things you have to ask to go through the interview. When I get to the end of my process there, I have not asked all the questions. I have not answered all your questions. And if I have, then I don't know how serious you are about this job, because I'm certain there's something that I've forgotten. You know, even if it's just like what's the thing that you think could make me be really well at this job, or what's the thing you look for in your best people in this position, or what's the skill that you think is most important to be a successful person in this role? Like, that's not a question that any interviewer is going to. They're looking for those things maybe, but like they hopefully haven't answered that question for you in the 15 or 20 or 30 minutes that you've been sitting with them.
Or
you know,
you
it's like
say, hey, who
you
orders?
should have an idea, like, do the research on their company, do the research on what the job is, and have, you know, a list of questions and have them written down. Don't feel afraid to like take something written down into the interview, like, and open it up and take notes on what they're telling you, you know, take notes on what they're saying to you about.
I think, I don't know. I think that it's always important when the questions that I get are questions based on a conversation that we're currently having. So like if they're talking about, hey, these are the things we're going through, these are the things with the job, I like the questions that apply to what's actually happening and what we just talked about, because it shows that you're paying attention and also shows deeper knowledge of what you're talking about. So like for me specifically, if I had someone tell me like they're dealing with this new payroll system and they're working on, you know, taking their people from the old payroll system to the new payroll system, I want to know, but also shows depth of my knowledge about what they're talking about. What payroll system are they using? What payroll system are they using? What are they changing to? Why are they switching? Those are three that are basically, you're getting that information and finding things out, but you're also promoting your in-depth, your deeper knowledge of what they're talking about. I would always hesitate to have like a standard go-to question, because you don't want that conversation, at least for me, I don't want that conversation to feel forced. So if I have questions, I used to get this a lot because I think it was like a really popular thing. People would say they have this question. I kept hearing it, the same question all the time, is what do you worry about from me if I get this job? Like, why do I have to be on the spot? Why am I on the spot? I'm interviewing you. Like, I don't know. You seem fine. Why? This is an awkward conversation now. I think that the better question is definitely something that applies and shows deeper knowledge of what you've just talked about. Those are people that have always been, because then it's just that conversation, especially when you get to the hiring manager. You know, just being able to have that free-flowing conversation is going to be so much better than the stupid interview. Like, tell me about this, tell me about this, tell me about this. What are your questions? Well, you talked about this a little bit. What exactly does that look like? And now you're just having a conversation, and now you're regular people again. I like that if you're able to do it.
All right, we only have like a couple. Does this cut off at 8?
Does it turn off? Does it literally turn off?
Oh,
No,
you said something about a couple more minutes. I didn't know if it was like.
Oh, I just thought it was just being. I'm in meetings where everybody's always going to another meeting, so I'm always trying to recover.
Yeah, we're just trying to keep it under an hour.
Okay. So, I mean, does anybody have anything else that they want to throw in, or questions, or?
No.
Okay.
I want to thank you guys
Thanks for organizing.
for everything, and we're gonna try to post this in a couple days to help someone out. So.
Well, also a thing too, I mean, like, I know Randy and Suzanne and Nick, I have not met you guys before, but if you have questions or anything, or even if you just want to call follow-up type stuff, feel free.
Thank you.
Well, are you gonna put, when you post this, are you gonna put our contact info on there?
I can if you want me to.
Not my phone number. No one call me, but you can definitely put
Katie, will you stop recording?
Yeah.
Please stop. Thank you.
You can definitely put I'm fine if people heard that. I don't want them to call me, but you can definitely put my email